coming today?
Yes, she is. That's some information that Lucille's got.
Make it available.
Okay, well, I didn't know.
I did,
Bronze
I think.
potato salad.
I'll get
Oh,
my
yeah.
wife to make
Sauerkraut.
some macaroni and cheese. My wife
I
will
wish
make
we would've got
macaroni and cheese.
iPads. If we would've got iPads, I would've been.
More?
And beer, I want lots of beer.
Well, obviously, yeah. And it goes
I only know
with
how to
what-
use
I don't drink
anything.
I think.
I don't have an eye.
What is like comfort shield?
So that means you gotta bring twice as
Well,
much.
you're hurting my stomach, I'm just gonna say.
I'm not smart enough to figure them out.
Keep your eyes comfortable by limiting the blue light.
I don't drink anymore. I had my share when I was young.
Basic elementary level. It's kind of like AOL.
I disagree.
Go back.
My computer, all my Apple products are amazing. Yeah, that's true.
And that's good.
Very true.
Makes the world go round.
Yeah.
That happened to me my last year in the Navy. I'd go down to these bars and stuff thinking I was missing something. And of course, you're the same old bar flight.
Yeah, yeah.
stay out till like 2 o'clock in the morning. You get
Yeah.
up and you amble down to the docks around, noon, wanting to catch a ride with some friends that are sailing. It's like, well, they've already left by 6.
Yeah, yeah.
I just found I was missing stuff that
Yeah.
I'd rather be doing.
Yeah.
Hanging out with a bunch of barflies out there.
Crisis, you might.
Well,
need
you know
a
what,
little bit
I was,
of time. Waiting on these, I think.
social club I belong to up north, and,
Yeah, 9 o'clock. Morning.
it was all guys. And,
How are you?
she said,
Good, how are you?
what do you guys talk about all the
Mr.
time?
Facemar's already
I
asked
told
me,
her, bro,
such and so asked to pass out a packet of information
"What are you
about
talking about?" I
development,
said,
which they said was unrelated completely to their application.
Nothing really.
Which is to be cautious. I
So
waited
one
until
time-
they don't
one
have the
time
application on
they
the
started-
agenda and passed it out.
They started to
It
have
says there's a
code.
line on the page that says we rely on these.
She walked in and she said,
So,
Oh, yeah, me neither.
this is it?
yeah, this is,
Well, it's kind of nice.
I passed out.
Well, what happened? Some restaurant.
Indiana.
Here.
Yes, ma'am.
She doesn't need it.
So,
I'm sure she doesn't really.
so it was, I done just a whole of knowledge, because if you had any question about anything, somebody had to answer.
I'm amazed.
For a colonoscopy and everything.
Single sex. I mean, they do have,
Yes.
Still don't know
Yeah.
why.
but unfortunately, we don't drink. The meetings would be much better if we did.
Yeah.
And he had his
One good thing
7 o'clock
about
in the
belonging to
morning
that club, if you needed
colonoscopy, it was 1:30 in the afternoon, had it.
a handyman,
Plumber,
hands,
carpenter,
all you had to do
there was
was
somebody,
pass a drink down to somebody and say, hey, by the way, next time you're over my way, would you take care of this?
Well, 4 o'clock.
Yes, yes.
what was the name?
The Italian-American political club. That was in the town, in that town,
That's why I can't park.
2 social clubs. One was the Italian-American Civic Club, and the other was the Italian-American Political Club. So that's how they differentiate. Yeah.
Sure. Into a variety of Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
Good morning, this is the Citrus County Planning and Development Commission hearing for June the 20th, 2024. If you'd like to join us at this time, I invite you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, please give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, for the courtesy of the applicants, the board, and those around you, at this time, if you can place all your cellular devices on mute, we appreciate it. May we get the roll call, please?
The following Planning and Development Commission members are present. Chair Richard Barmez, James Royce, First Vice Chair, David Bramblett, Second Vice Chair, Michael Facemeyer, Robert Shara, Kurt Stone, and Stacy Worthington.
Thank you. If any person decides to appeal the decision made by the commission with respect to any matter considered at this hearing, he or she will need a record of proceedings, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record indicates testimony and evidence upon which an appeal is based. During the public input portion of the meeting, individuals are given 3 minutes, and representatives of an organization is given 5 minutes. When anyone is wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete the yellow form to hand to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number of the application on the form. The yellow forms can be found at the podium by the door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker. Comments will be limited to the topics being heard. So please state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the tape record. Now, at this time, I'm going to open the podium for the opportunity for the public to come forward to address the commission on any issues that they wish. This it's not for any applications that's being heard today, but any other issues.
Good morning. I'm Paul Daugherty from 3481 West King B Street. I've been in front of the board here before. I've got some general comments about trends I'm seeing in this county. If you look at your mission statement over there, it says a welcoming, economically vibrant community. Well, that part's being taken care of here. You folks are doing a great job of passing things. Where people and nature live in harmony, I've got a little bit of question about what's going on here. We have thousands, if not tens of thousands, of existing lots in Pine Ridge, Citrus Springs, and Citrus Hills. They've been there since the mid-'80s. They have not been built on. This board helps to pass legislation, I guess you'd say, or ordinances that enable the county commission to make decisions. They're deciding to put in thousands of more housing lots in high density builds, particularly down in the Lecanto area. It's going to drastically change the character of the area. They're taking LDR land, always asking for MDR, PSO, GNC, an upgrade in their land, which incidentally makes it worth more. And they want to pack people in there like fish, basically. 6 houses to the acre, 8 houses to the acre. This is not good. We have, like I say, thousands of available lots, quarter acre, half acre, 1 acre, 2 acre lots, all over this county. Why this rush? Why are we changing the character of this county in such a manner? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Anyone? All right, at this time, I'm going to close the public portion of this meeting. We have minutes to approve for April the 18th and May the 2nd.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, any comments? I do have one on April 18th on page 13. We adjourned at 12 p.m., not 12 a.m. Although it did feel like it that day.
Understood. You got it.
All right, all approved, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any staff announcements?
Yeah, two. So we originally advertised an ordinance amendment for the Land Development Code today, and we're not hearing it. That's been pushed back to your next meeting. We had some late additions from another department. So that application will not be heard today, the ordinance amendment. Also, before the meeting, we distributed envelopes that I was promised from the person that gave it to me that they were unrelated to any particular application. They have a cover letter that is related to a particular application, so I'm going to collect all those from you at the end of the meeting. They should not have been distributed to you at this time.
Thank you.
And we do have 2 new planners who keep staying away from the meeting room and watching these on their computer, so they're very smart. I can't introduce them to you, but they're here, and eventually they'll be before you.
Thank you. Ex parte communications that I will not forget today.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. With regard to CPA AA-2024-00003 and AA-2024-00004, have you had any ex parte communications that you need to disclose? And we'll start with Mr. Shera.
Site visit.
None.
Site visits.
None.
None.
Site visits?
Mr. Chair, as we get started, our meetings have become very popular, and they are streamed on YouTube. So I've heard comments that sometimes it's very difficult to hear you all. So if you could please focus on keeping the microphones very close to you, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have like views and everything, huh?
Yeah, we have views on on YouTube. We're quite popular.
Well, maybe
As
I
well as
should-
our code compliance hearings, those get a lot of activity.
I might have to wash ourselves later.
Sometimes that's scary.
Watch the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I
Disable
agree.
comments wisely.
All right, now it's time for CPA/AA-2024-00003 for Ashley Phillips, Chapter Health. If the applicant come up to the podium as we get the staff introduction, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning. This application is for Ashley Phillips for Chapters Health Foundation, Inc.
I do have packets, if I could hand them out to the commission.
He's
Is that okay?
handing out packets,
Are
but
you
what's in
through?
the packets?
I
No.
don't know, we
Oh.
can't take packets. I don't know about these.
You can't take packets?
No, there's a quasi judicial ordinance that we've passed.
Okay.
So anything you've already submitted, they have.
Understood, thank you.
All right, she's not finished with your introduction yet, so just 1 second,
That's all right.
please.
This application is a request to redesignate MDR to PSO on the Flume and the LDC Atlas map. This is an aerial view of the subject property. This is a view of approximately half of the frontage of the subject property. This is looking east on West Gulf to Lake Highway. This is looking west on West Gulf to Lake Highway. This is looking across West Gulf to Lake Highway at South Yellowwood Terrace. And this is the site plan submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Brian Dion from Johnson Pope, 491st Avenue South, St. Petersburg, Florida. I am here on behalf of the applicant. This is for a site 2797 West Gulf to Lake Highway. We are requesting to amend the future land use map and the land code atlas map just for a small portion of the site. The site is currently zoned, split zoned as MDR, which is medium density residential, and PSO, which is professional service office, which is the lowest density commercial use in the county. The north 2.6 acres of the property are currently zoned as MDR, and we're asking for only that portion to be rezoned to be PSO, so the entire property is PSO. The line of demarcation for splitting the PSO and MDR are, it's pretty arbitrary. North, there's a 30-foot right-of-way, which is currently undeveloped, which we would like to remain in place as part of our buffering. We also have a 15-foot buffer per the code, which we have implemented into our site plan. The northeast portion of the property also has a retention pond area, which will be used as further buffering between any sort of commercial use of the property. The use is for, currently would be for a medical office. To the west of our property is currently a hospice center. Medical office would be a lower trafficked use than a hospice center, which has, people coming in, coming out, ambulatory people coming in, coming out. North of us is MDR. PSO is used as a buffer between residential and other commercial uses. So again, it's the lowest density commercial use in the county. And this PSO would be used to buffer the MDR, which is medium density. It's not a low density, it's a medium density. If you look across Gulf to Lake Highway, there's a similar pattern where there is a higher commercial use. It is general commercial directly south of Gulf to Lake Highway, and then directly south of that is a low-density residential. So if we're looking at it, low-density residential versus a general commercial, we're in a tighter window as far as how close those two uses are. As mentioned, we also are buffering to make sure that the MDR to the north is separated from our property. Currently, we're meeting all zoning regulations and codes. Staff has provided a report which provides that the proposed land development Atlas map change and future land use change are consistent with the comprehensive plan. And as far as access, the access would be only from Gulf to Lake Highway. There would be no access from the north, nor would there be access from any other right-of-ways that would currently exist. There's a slow-down lane that's already there used for the hospice center, which would be utilized for this property as well. I'm free to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. What did you say your name was?
Brian Dion.
And you're an attorney?
Yes.
Okay, because we didn't have any reference to your appearance on any of the application documents. You must be an
I work with Mark
associate.
Bentley. I'm from the same office as him.
Okay, all right, so,
Apologize, I should have.
no, that's okay. I thought you were an attorney, but I didn't.
I got asked to step in last minute, so yeah.
That happens.
It happens
I'm
quite a bit.
familiar, so, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, staff have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, sir. You have a conceptual plan that was submitted with this application, but you did not apply for a planned unit development. Could you explain that justification for that?
Yeah, so the property doesn't really need a planned unit development as far as we're concerned. Everything we're doing is to code, so there's no need for any additional changes to be there. Also, because of the way that we're accessing the site, there's no need for cross-access, and there's no access from the north, so there's no future dichotomy that's needed. We're doing this as a step-up plan, so there would be additional uses put on the site, which would be consistent with PSO as well.
No further questions.
Thank you, Joe. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Just as a follow-up to staff question, why would you not state the purpose, your intended purpose for this particular parcel? Which in fact would be done through the PUD.
So the purpose of the use would be for a medical office.
But there's no obligation, there's no commitment on your part to do that. You could, without stating that specifically, you could, use any of the permitted or allowable uses for that particular parcel. That's why I'm asking, why didn't you specifically state what your intentions are?
I believe our intentions were stated on the record previously, and they were provided to staff. As far as what the use, it's owned by a medical company, so they would be using it for a medical office. And then, like I said, there would be other offices that would be put on the site. But as far as the intended use, that is the use that we would be putting forward.
Okay.
And that's on the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Shara. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
May we get the staff to come forward?
Good morning, Jen Perkins, Planner for Land Development Division. Just wanted to maybe clarify a little more about when and why a planned unit development is needed, wanted, requested. A planned unit development gives an actual site plan that is approved with conditions that must be adhered to. Without a PUD, in this case, it is a conceptual site plan, and Commissioner Shara, you are correct that other uses could be allowed in that area. So this application is a request to amend the future land use map and the LDC Atlas map to change a portion of the subject property from medium density residential district to professional services office district. This is an aerial view of the subject property. It is approximately 8.1 acres, vacant and heavily wooded, and takes access from West Gulf to Lake Highway. The applicant is proposing to redesignate that northern 2.8 acres from MDR to PSO to be consistent with the remainder of the property. There are single-family dwellings to the north, a hospice to the west, an agricultural classification to the east, and vacant commercial, a used car sales business, and a medical office to the south across West Gulf to Lake Highway. This is the conceptual site plan that was submitted by the applicant. A non-residential site development plan was approved 2 days ago to develop the medical clinic that's in the southwest quadrant and the drainage retention area that is in the northeast quadrant. This conceptual plan proposes future development, such as the 2 medical office buildings in the northwest quadrant and an ambulatory surgery center in the southeast quadrant. A medical office requires a conditional use in medium-density residential district. It is permitted by right in PSO. Some PSO uses, such as the neighborhood commercial uses that are permitted by right, are a conditional use in medium-density residential district. Approval of this application has the potential to allow higher intensity non-residential development adjacent to the single-family dwellings to the north. A master plan, a PUD, would have helped to determine compatibility, but one was not provided. Concurrency has been demonstrated for sanitary sewer, potable water, but not for solid waste. This is solely a request for a land use and zoning change, so recommending approval of this application does not recommend approval of the conceptual site plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions for staff? Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Scherer.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. Is it possible for the PDC to assign a condition to this application that would identify the use as medical facility or medical use?
No, sir.
So without a PUD application, going back to our previous discussion, the applicant, not necessarily at this point in time, but a future applicant, if they sell the land, could then, put on that land any facility that is allowed under the PSO.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Worthington.
just to clarify, the land use change is a 2.8 acres, and by right now on 8.1 acres, they can already do PSO no matter what because it's zoned that way. And also they already have a permit approved to build a medical office, so the use is pretty clear.
No, the entire site is not allowed PSO uses, only the PSO portion.
Which is 8 acres?
No, the entire site is 8.1 acres.
Okay. So
it's
what's
just
the amount
more
of
than-
PSO?
I'm sorry?
She said 2 acres was the amount that they wanted to upzone.
2.8.
Can you go back to your land?
Yep. So the hashed MDR portion, that's the 2.8 acres that they are requesting to amend to PSO to allow PSO uses on that northern 2.8 acres.
Mm-hmm. But on the 6 acres, they can already do PSO because it's zoned that way.
This is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Worthington. Commissioner Stone.
Could you iterate some of the other uses that are permitted under a PSO designation?
Absolutely. So in medium-density residential district with a conditional use is medical dental office, professional business office, barbershop, beauty salon, small engine equipment repair shop, restaurant with no drive-up facilities, and a multi-use strip center, no more than 12,800 square feet total. Those are just some of the examples. And then those would be permitted by right in the PSO portion.
So all those things that are permitted in the MDR, you could also do in the PSO?
They are a conditional use in MDR, which would require a public hearing to come before you. If it's PSO, they can do it by right as long as there's not a conditional use or a PUD associated in that land use district. But the uses I just read to you, conditional use in MDR, permitted outright in PSO.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Stone. I have a question. I don't know if we got the cart before the horse, or I just don't understand. We issued a permit 2 days ago for this property.
It is only for that southwest quadrant, and that is zone PSO, so they did not need a conditional use for that. And drainage retention areas are allowed in residential land use districts.
So without the PUD, the cross-access that the hospice center has next door is just like a dead-end street for them? Wasn't it put in as to cross-access this property if it was converted to a medical facility or another facility?
As far as the cross-access, I do not recall from the site plan, but I would assume technical services would have required that. That is a requirement.
They have a dead end that goes right into the woods to that property that I saw when I was there on the site visit, so I'm just curious. Thank you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Does the applicant have any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I have one.
Commissioner Worthington.
If they're asking for no deviations and cross-access is part of our land development code, wouldn't they be required to put it in the front portion?
Yes, yes, and I'm saying I don't have the site plan in front of me, but that is something that would have been required to be approved. Because it was only 2 days ago, I couldn't include it in your packet. Yes, yes. Yes. Mr. Dion just showed me the approved. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, whatever he just showed you is not part of the commissioner's records.
Yeah, so that was exactly what I was getting ready to say. Thank you.
Sorry.
Apologies.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to kind of clear it up real quick. So the medical clinic on the left is already allowed under the PSO because it falls in that 6-acre PSO designated. The ambulatory surgery center is allowed?
I believe so, yes, is that?
Is that considered medical, whatever, under the PSO designation?
Yes.
Maybe, maybe not. Okay.
I apologize.
So really, the medical office, the drainage retention area is allowed in the residential. The medical office building could be allowed in residential with a conditional use.
Correct.
So really what we're talking about are those two buildings there to the top left corner, medical office buildings.
Correct.
With a conditional use, would the applicant be required to bring forward a PUD?
With a conditional use, no, but that site plan that gets conditions, they are beholden to.
Correct, but they would not be required to bring a PUD.
Correct.
Okay, so, all right, no further questions for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Bramlett.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Shara.
I believe from the presentation that we received that the intended purpose for this application is very clear. And I personally don't have any objection to it at all from the standpoint that it's a medical services. The nature of my question was, if they don't have a PUD, in the future, another use could be, could be brought to this location that is not a medical use, and then would not be, as long as it fell within the classification of a PSO, which are many allowed uses of different intensities, then they could do that without coming back to this forum.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? I see none. Thank you. At this time, the public portion of the meeting will be open. If there's anyone present who would like to speak on this application, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes and organizations have 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board. If you have any documentation that you want to enter into a record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary. Anyone? Anyone? All right, well, seeing none, the public portion of the hearing is now closed. We'll bring this discussion back to the board.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Worthington.
I'd like to make a motion The Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA-AA-2024-00003 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Worthington,
Second.
a second from Commissioner Facemeyer. Any further discussions from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Madam Attorney.
might I? As we've discussed in the past, you have an attorney before you who's offered argument, no facts. So you have no testimony other than the testimony of staff, which the testimony of staff, you have pretty pictures about what may or may not be placed on here, except for a permit application for a medical clinic. So when you're making your decision, I just want to make sure that you understand that the pretty pictures, there's no commitment on behalf of the applicant to construct or to develop the property pursuant to the pretty pictures.
Thank you, Madam Attorney.
Mr. Chair, I would just say that I'm not in favor of the application as it is before me. I believe that if this was presented in a different way, that I would be in favor of it. I'm not in favor of the project in its entirety. I just don't like the presentation.
Thank you, and I'd like to echo that. I'm not in favor of the application as well.
Mr. Chair, I will say that the reason why I made the motion is because the front portion is already zoned PSO, and they can develop by right, medical clinic, whatever. We're talking about a rezoning of 2.8 acres. As Mr. Bramlett pointed out, the two front buildings are legal, the retention center is legal. We're talking about a small, very small portion. And I think that we can say that there's bad faith actors, and I know that Ms. Lynn often likes to rely heavily on the people who act in bad faith, but I think that having a permit to develop a medical clinic shows me that that is what their interest is. I guess, yes, everyone can pull it and do something else, but they could do PSO. And they could do PSO on 6 acres, and now they can do PSO on 8 acres. And if you look at the property right next door, it extends past, and that property extends almost in line with this property as far as what they have developed.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, might I
Madam Attorney.
respond? You said that I rely on bad actors. I don't rely on bad actors, but this board is making decisions that will impact this community years into the future based upon the commitments that are offered before you. There are no commitments being offered. It's not that I rely on bad actors. I just want the board to make its decisions based upon the evidence and testimony presented to it.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman?
Commissioner Shara.
Okay, I will not be in favor of this motion, and it is not, again, specifically related to this particular medical clinic. We had the applicant say, in their opinion, a PUD was not necessary for this application. And we're talking actually something that I believe goes beyond the 2.8 acres, although that is the subject land that's involved here. We're talking about if they're not going to follow the PUD process and specifically state the purpose, something down the road may in fact be significantly different. So I think that I would be in favor of this if it was done in a proper, which I'm interpreting to be the proper forum, which would be a PUD.
Thank you, Commissioner Shara. Any other comments from the board?
It appears as though the applicant might want to address the board, maybe perhaps to ask for a continuance.
May I approach the board?
Yes, sir.
Can we ask for continuance if we were to develop with a PUD as part of the plan?
Motion for continuance.
Second.
Hang on, we have a motion
Yeah,
on the
you have
floor.
We have a
Oh,
motion.
I
we have
withdraw
to
the other
remove.
motion.
Withdraw my second.
Motion for continuance.
Second.
All in favor for continuance, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Your motion's been granted, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application is AA-2024-00004 for Calvary Christian Center Foundation. The applicant come forward as we get the staff introduction, please.
This is Sarah Case for Calvary Christian Center Assembly of God.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Just a second.
Technical difficulties over here with the computer.
This is an aerial view of the subject property. This is a view of the subject property looking left and right along East Norval Bryant Highway. This is looking east on East Norval Bryant Highway. This is looking west on East Norval Bryant Highway. This is looking across East Norval Bryant Highway at Hernando Elementary School. And this is the site plan submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Excuse
Yeah.
me, can we get ex parte on this application?
We did earlier.
We did in the beginning, yes, ma'am.
We did both?
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize, my mistake.
Thanks for keeping us on track.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for a signal now because.
It's all you.
Hi, good morning. For the record, Sarah Case. I'm with Next Level Planning and Permitting, and my address is 3825 South Florida Avenue, Suite 4, and that is in Lakeland, Florida. And I'm here today as the authorized agent for Calvary Christian Center. Before you is a request to vacate the portion of the master plan regarding this 19.5 acres. In 2008, there was a PD overlay for this, specifically for an 118,000 square foot retail center. And as you know, based on the aerials, you'll see it has not been developed. And my client purchased the property in February of 22. And their intent is to first build a sanctuary and later add on schools, separate buildings for elementary, for middle, and for high school. And I appreciate having the opportunity to go second because I believe there's going to be several comments that were brought up for that application that I can try and answer now. When we had our pre-application meeting, the date was August 28th of 23. The notes were that there being a planned development overlay, it will either need to be amended or remove the current planned development overlay. That which can be completed by changing from the GNC PDO to GNC through an Atlas amendment or create a PUD for the property, a new PUD for the property. So we decided collectively as a team with the architect, the engineer, and the owner, and myself, that the most practical and clearest action to take would be to vacate the planned development, and because we can develop the church and the church property related uses under the GNC. So we're not asking for a land use amendment to change the underlying land use. We want to retain, we just want to remove that PD overlay for this application. We were not required to submit a site plan, but we wanted to submit a site plan. So similar to the previous application before you, you are not approving this site plan, but we wanted to demonstrate what we're proposing, what it would appear like on the subject property. The intent, again, is to build the sanctuary first and in incremental phases as funds are raised, then they will be able to build the classroom buildings in this overlay. But we did, in this example, this illustration, if you will. We did not want to go the PD avenue because we didn't want a binding site plan based on if something were to change for the church as far as square footage of the intended uses and all of that. But again, that the instructions were we had an either or based on the pre-application that took place, and so we presented one of those options, which was an Atlas amendment that is before you for your decision today. I will stand for any questions. I would like an opportunity to rebut if there are any comments and also to respond to this dais. Again, I would recommend, or I would request the opportunity for a recommendation of approval to the board when you make your decision today. Thank you.
All right. Does the staff have any questions for the applicant?
No, sir. She answered my question about the PUD.
Thank you, sir. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Thank you. May we get the staff introduction, please?
So this application requests to amend the LDC Atlas map to remove that expired planned development overlay. The applicant proposes to amend the current zoning from general commercial district with a planned development overlay to general commercial district. The future land use is also general commercial. The properties gained their GNC designation as part of that CPA AA PDO in 2008, which, as Ms. Case stated, was approved for a master plan for a shopping center that was approved for up to 118,000 square feet of retail. There were no permits issued, and the PDO has since expired. This is an aerial view of the subject properties that total approximately 19.5 acres, are vacant and heavily wooded. The south property takes access from East Norval Bryant, and the north property takes access from East Lemon Drive. There is a commercial wholesale nursery to the west and Hernando Elementary School to the south. This is a future land use map. The subject properties are adjacent to MDR to the north and west, and residential mixed use to the east. The properties also abut general commercial to the east and west, and professional service, public, semi-public institutional district is across Norval Bryant. There are single-family dwellings to the north, and Canterbury Lakes Estates is to the east. And this is similar to the previous application. This is a conceptual site plan that was submitted by the applicant. It shows a main church building and an elementary, middle, and high school, as well as an athletic field. Because there is no PUD associated with this request, there would be any allowable uses in GNC could be developed. The proposed use could be compatible, but the applicant, again, is not beholden to this particular site plan. So other GNC uses may or may not be compatible. If the property is developed as indicated, then the house of worship and its associated uses would be a less intense use adjacent to those single-family dwellings to the north. So this is solely a request to remove that planned development overlay, the expired PDO, and again, recommending approval of this application, does not recommend approval of this site plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions for staff?
She indicated no.
Oh, I'm sorry. I could not see her. Thank you. Does the board have any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Sheriff.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Again.
Yes.
Understand what the application is saying in terms of the change in the designation. And it seems that that's a very narrow request. And although the applicant has presented what their future goals may be, or in fact are, over time, the approval of this application has nothing to do with what their intended end use would be. That they would, now, so here's my question for you. They would still be required to come back to planning and come back to PDC for the permitted use of a house of worship and/or school.
Not if this application is approved. They would not need to come back for anything because a house of worship and associated uses are an allowable use in GNC.
Can you go back to your land use map, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to make it
Yep.
clear, you weren't at all being considered what was up there before.
Okay, so understanding
Sorry,
that.
microphone.
I'm sorry. So understanding that the GNC does have a permitted use for a house of worship, but there were other specific items that were addressed in your report, concurrency for one. There's no indication of potable water, sanitary sewer, solid waste, or others that have been addressed. So I'm still stuck. We're simply talking about a redesignation of this site by removing the PDO.
That is correct.
And so then something else is going to happen in the future that is consistent with GNC. But there are specific items you've addressed that haven't been addressed by the applicant. Where do those get addressed?
Can you please clarify those items?
Well, the concurrency issues for one.
Concurrency is difficult to assess when there is not a use. This was a conceptual use. It is a request for an Atlas amendment only, which is just removing that PDO. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'll stop. Thank you.
No, you can't.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm following you, and if I can please add, I apologize, Jen,
Absolutely.
and I'm jumping in.
No.
We're very careful with these kind of requests because the original land use district may not have been approved without that PUD. And the PUD, by taking it away, that land use district may or may not be appropriate. Now, you're seeing it's right on 486, however, it butts medium-density residential to the rear. However, the previous PUD was an intense shopping center. So you got a lot of things balancing here, which is why we're super cautious on this, because as approved, any GNC use would be there. However, previously a shopping center. So, but MDR, you've got a lot of things to balance here. We're very, very careful on taking off those PDO. It's not just we're going to remove it. It's we're going to remove it and now allow everything. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Bramlett.
If the applicant, so we know why the applicant didn't provide a PUD based on her statements. The restrictions of being too restrictive, I guess, to the site plan. If I remember correctly, aren't there some allowables for interchangeability and maybe, I don't know exactly the word that's used when you have a PUD that would not require the applicant to come back in front of this board?
Minor modifications.
Yeah, so-
But Joanna would be better to state what
Can
those
we sort of
are.
define that for the record here?
You're on the right track there. A PUD saying this could be allowing churches and ancillary uses, which we've been really careful, thanks to Dr. Wilburn, on churches, is trying to allow because we know their plans change. So a PUD just saying that would have been very, very helpful in the exact same process. Unfortunately, we don't have that. So there are processes. You can get the very detailed plan. You can get the bubble plan. You can get a list of uses. PUDs have a wide range of things. But I think saying this was a church and ancillary would have been very helpful for this because that would tell you exactly what's here. Oh, is that what you're looking at?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Worthington.
I understand where you're saying the underlying zoning may not have been GNC, but can you confirm for me or whether or not churches and houses of worship are permitted in all land use districts?
I believe most, but in the residential districts, at least, they are generally a conditional use. I do not have Chapter 2 in front of me to tell you all of those. I do not remember all of those.
Yeah, typically, and I don't have Chapter 2 in front of me either, but typically they're allowed in non-residential land uses, and in residential land uses, they require conditional use.
Mr. Chairman, do PUDs ever go away by themselves? I mean, this one's been expired, but it has to take a physical act by us to actually eliminate it. It just hangs out there in space, requiring a giant shopping mall without us taking some action on it.
When permits are not applied for, permits are not issued within a certain amount of time that is deemed by that planned unit development application that was approved, the PUD expires. And then, yes, it does need to come back before you and the Board of County Commissioners to be able to remove it. And at that time, they can both remove and amend it, or amend it by removing and providing something else for you to look at.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Commissioner Facemeyer.
I just want to be clear, and this is a simple question. If we were to approve this application today, the applicant could construct a house of worship without any further action. And if the project expands or the campus expands beyond the house of worship to include grammar school, high school, athletic fields, then further action would be required.
No further action, correct.
No further action?
Correct.
Okay. As long as it met code,
Wait, I think he's,
uses.
correct?
I think he said if it's not approved.
No, if we do approve it.
Oh, if you do approve it, I apologize.
Yes. I might have said, what I said and what I was thinking may have been two different things, but.
So from this rendition of what is proposed, maybe planned, is just a maybe. We're not approving that. And we have no idea the intensity of this, what do you call it, this arena here, or whatever you want to call it, what that will entail. Will there be grandstands right next to residential? And what kind of buffer? That none of that is mentioned. I think it's type 3 buffer, right?
I was going to say, so that conceptual plan is not part of this application, so.
So this is meaningless.
So that may be their intent, but that is not what's getting approved as part of this. So if this were to get approved, they would be allowed to permit any use that's allowed in GNC, however they want to do that. Now, granted, they're still going to have to meet the standards of the land development code for anything they put on there. So large non-res, small non-res, stuff like that. So they'll have to meet setbacks, they'll have to install buffers and things like that. But that plan specifically is not part of this approval.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Scherer.
So from the standpoint of the county being able to do its job in planning, being able to do its job, is the preferred approach a PUD that gives the county the proper oversight and review of the specifics that are, would be proposed for this site? For instance, concurrency was one that just jumps out, because concurrency is a major issue. If you're going to build a house of worship, potentially a junior high school and a high school on a septic system, that just is a red flag to me. And you're going to use water from a well. Those kinds of issues seem to be fundamental blocking and tackling issues that need to be addressed. Are they addressed at this venue, or are they addressed later in the permitting process?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not really preferred. I mean, they have the option to do a PUD and they have the option to do a straight land use change. So it's really what the applicant wants to submit. But the PUD does give more information and more assurances as to how the site is going to develop. So.
And can a PUD be structured such that it evolves over time? That you have a series of phases. You have a house of worship, initial phase, and then you have subsequent developments, but all would be subject to the PUD and the conditions set forth in the PUD.
Yes, they can be engineered to be flexible as long as they're worded correctly.
And is there any reason not to do a PUD other than the applicant's desire not to do one?
I don't know how to answer that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I have one question, really. It goes back to we approved this today, and then they can come back and build a church and schools, and they have to meet all LDC requirements, all the building codes, technical services will look at the choking that school's gonna provide at that intersection across from Hernando. Would that also address Mr. Scherer's concern and my concern about the septic and the well system that's not gonna be provided? I mean, there's so many unanswered questions. We're kinda like, I feel like we're giving them a blank slate to do whatever they wanna do, and it's only gonna be approved, through a small process, and nobody in the community, including us, will even really know what they're gonna do until it's done, and then it's kinda late.
Right, so any approvals would be through the permitting process, and so as part of that, they would have to demonstrate that they can meet whatever land development code requirements there are for access management, stormwater, water and sewer connection, if it's required, and they would have to demonstrate all that at time of permitting. And if they can't meet that, then it would hold up their permitting.
So then they could just come in, we could say, yeah, we approve this, and then they just come in, build a church, and then add schools, and do whatever they really want to do, is what you're saying?
They could obtain permits or apply for permits for any use allowable in general commercial districts subject to land development code.
And the only people that's gonna make that decision is the planning department at the permitting, is what am I understanding that correctly?
Well, it would be for any use allowed in general commercial, so there's no decision as to, what uses they would be submitting. It would be whatever they wanted to submit, subject to land development code. And the people reviewing the permit would review it based on the land development code requirements.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions from the board?
Would there be any,
Talking to Mike.
would there be any responsibility for the developer regarding traffic on this road across from another already existing school with school buses, and them adding another school across the street from it? Would they be responsible for that? Or is there something saying that it could be agreed upon that they would be responsible for that?
They'll have to meet access management standards, which technical services reviews. We don't have, we're not aware of additional standards for a school, but it is any use would have to be reviewed for access management, which is turn lanes, things like that. No, they're not gonna have to accommodate for additional traffic on the roadway, but they are gonna have to accommodate for access management coming in and out. Do they need a turn lane? Do they need stop bars and those kind of things? I'm happy to put those to technical services, but it would be like any other use. So a fast food place or a church, the same review process, permitting and access management with county staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Does the applicant have any questions? Or rebuttal?
At this point, it's just questions, not
Just
rebuttal.
questions.
Oh, it's just questions. I wanted
Questions
to,
of staff.
I wanted to clarify
Yeah, just
a
questions
couple
to them.
things. Okay, well, I will wait to address. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll bring the discussion back to the board.
Open
I'm
to the
sorry.
public.
Forgot about the public. I'm sorry. The public portion of the meeting will now be open. If there's anyone present who would like to speak on this application, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes and organizations have 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board, and if you have any documentations that you would like to enter to the record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary. Anyone?
May I speak again?
If you fill out a yellow form, come forward.
She's already got it. Again, for the record, Paul Darty, 3481 West King B Street. On the face of this, it looks very nice, very acceptable, but I've seen a very similar sized parcel with a similar use put on it. It used to be 6 acres of GNC and 14 acres of MDR, and about 6 years ago, boards much like this one approved taking the MDR, making it general commercial. They did apply for a PUD, they were granted a PUD, but they had a conceptual site plan similar in scope to what you've seen here, different placements and so on. They had a large DRA shown on it, they had a church placed right in the flood area, all kinds of interesting little things. In practice, starting about 2 years ago, they actually built the church about 300 feet away from where they said they were going to. They took a DRA that was about an acre and a half and turned it into about a 3-acre one that the center of gravity moved about 150 feet to the west. They found out that the soil types weren't what they thought they were. They were advertised as one thing, but it was really what's called a loclusa, old mine spoil. Things like this can really upset what goes on with a site plan of this type. They don't necessarily have to do what they say they're going to do, even if it stays a church. Be careful what you do with this one. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak? Anyone else?
My name is Lynn Floyd. I'm at 3461 North Canterbury Lake Drive in Hernando. This development that they're planning, we have a very small residential. Where they're planning on using Lemon Street, it comes right out into the entrance into Canterbury Lake Drive. The amount of traffic that's going to be incurred based on that makes us very uncomfortable. There's many times with the traffic that's already on 486, you have to make a right in order to make a left. You have to go up and make a U-turn just to get out. Between the development that's gone on at 486 and 491, 486 is already going to be a nightmare with them bringing this full development of another school right across the street is just, for the residents of Canterbury Lake, not acceptable.
Thank you. Anyone else? The podium's open for you. You can just rebuttal to the public. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to take this opportunity. I do appreciate the comments that were provided. I'll address the last one first. Our property ownership, as you can tell from this land use map, extends north. And for some reason, that what's before you is two parcels that comprise the 19.5 acres. But for some reason, the address of the northern piece is Lemon Street, but our property is a 25-foot wide strip of property that extends north. There will be no access to Lemon Street. It is addressed Lemon Street, but our access points, and again, you're not here to approve a site plan, but I did want to point out the fact that the northernmost portion of the north parcel within this request is 25 feet in width. So I'm hoping that will satisfy concerns for in the future when this property is developed. The other thing is what the gentleman was stating. He was discussing a project that is not this one, and I just wanted to, with all due respect, bring our attention back to the application that is before you. So the facts are, the owner of the property, this subject property, is Calvary Christian Center, Assembly of God. So they are not a developer per se, that you don't know who owns the property. The facts are, this church owns the property. Another fact, they are located 2 miles south of this subject site. Their intent, we were just trying to be transparent with you. We were not required to submit a conceptual plan. That is for illustrative purposes only. In case there were questions, how would it lay out? But we've done some engineering, we've figured some things out. So to answer your question on concurrency, it's not going to be well and septic. There are hydrants located around the site that we would be extending water and sewer. So for us to actually request concurrency now, we are not sure without this process being approved what that concurrency is going to be. Another fact is this property has GNC land use now. This property has GNC zoning now with a PD overlay that has expired. The only way to remove that labeling, that overlay, is to come before you. So I could be coming before you representing Calvary Christian Center, or somebody else could be coming before you, but our hands were tied. The other thing is within, and it might be a process that needs to be explored later, but we were not told the only way to get the approval for this was to submit a PD. It was an option. The options were given, do an Atlas amendment to remove the PD overlay or submit a PD. So I'm very concerned that it sounds like with some of the questions that you all had of staff, it sounds like from now on, there needs to be a PD submitted with any kind of action like this. And had we known that, we submitted this, we had the pre-app in August, submitted in April, we would have had the timing just right to go ahead and do the PD. So with that, I think I've addressed, again, you're not approving the conceptual site plan that was before you, that was only for illustrative purposes, and our hands were tied to come before you to remove, it's applicant initiated to remove the PD overlay that would have allowed the 118,000 square foot of retail. And what we're requesting as the owner of the property, a church, we're requesting significantly less of an impact use as owners. So with that being said, I would like your recommendation of approval to the board. And again, I'll stand for any questions that you might have.
All right, this time I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing, and I will bring the discussion back to the board for any discussions.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bramlett.
I'm going on my 9th year on this commission, and I can only think of one time ever that we ever approved an Atlas amendment to GNC without a PDU, and that, in my opinion, at that particular time was a very different board makeup. I probably should just leave it at that statement. It was a very different board makeup. Things change. Calvary Christian Center Assembly of God owns this property now, but who knows what happens. We do a blanket PDO removal or plan development PUD removal, whatever it is for that expired, and this property becomes GNC and it's open for any development. We don't have a PUD with it. I do agree with Ms. Case that maybe all of our millions of viewers on YouTube that are watching these videos and seeing us today, maybe they should take these last two applications and understand and know that if you want us to do some Atlas amendment changes to a higher use on a property, you probably should come to us with a PUD, because as this particular application stands before us, I will not be in favor of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bramlett. Anyone else?
I agree with Mr. Bramlett. This pretty picture here gives me an indication of what could be. It doesn't tell me the extent of any of this. These buildings could become bigger. The athletic facility could become larger. You got residential people behind it, and Friday night lights don't go over big when you live over the fence. I'm going to not support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Royce. Commissioner Shara.
Excuse me. I have absolutely no objections to the concept of a church or a school or a combination of church and school over time. That is not where my focus is. Supporting Mr. Bramlett and Mr. Royce, I believe what we're creating here is a precedent. in terms of if an applicant wants to bring forward a sophisticated, large-scale project, that it needs to be done in a way in which the county, through its planning, and the PDC can get a firm understanding of what the intention is, even if it's over time and phased, and making sure that sophisticated application complies with and meets the standards that are set forth. On that basis, I will not be supporting this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Shara. Anyone else? Well, I would just echo the previous comments. It's hard for me to provide, for say, a blank slate with no additional information. I understand we're not doing the conceptual plan, but this plan can go away. It could get bigger. It could get smaller. I think the PDUs work, and I would just not be in support of this application the way it was presented. Anyone for a motion?
It looks as though the applicant is approaching the podium.
I'm going to follow my predecessor and ask for a continuance before you complete your vote so that I can go back to my clients who are not here today and discuss further.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to continue the application.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Bramlett, a second by Commissioner Facemeyer. All in favor for continuance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of our application period.
Yes. And despite Mr. Facemeyer and Mr. Stone's greatest attempts to have me give you guys a July 4th picnic, I will not be doing that. We will not be open on July 4th. Obviously, we don't have a meeting on July 4th. So your next hearing is going to be July 18th. Because of one in July, we have 7 applications on that agenda, including the large Cardinal Farms, which is the first one in on the Cardinal IMA. So a lot of stuff coming before you. You'll get that packet in the next week or so and have a lot of time to review it, I think. Okay.
So with that being said, I believe she's telling us, guys and ladies, we get free lunch on the 18th provided by the county.
You do know we have a county budget, right? I mean, pens are hard, so yeah, okay. And also I'll be collecting those folders again, and if we get something that's not related to an application, we'll distribute it to you.
All right, great. Mr. Landon, you have anything to add?
The gentleman spoke earlier, just in the general comment period, about some of the applications we're seeing, and I think we had a couple workshops last week on kind of the growth in the county and the changes that we're seeing. And based on those discussions, we see more dense applications now because the change in the economy. 1-acre houses or even half-acre houses are largely unattainable for the working class. So we have to see a variety of markets come to the county to accommodate those. And I think that's when the market speaks, that tells us the trend. So I think that's why we're seeing more dense and more diverse housing options come to the county, just because post-COVID, the housing market has dramatically changed like we've never seen before. So assuming that that we exclusively require folks to build on half-acre and 1-acre lots, I just don't know. I don't know in the county if there's a 1-acre lot with a house on it that's under $500,000 anymore, and that was not the case back in 2019. So I think that's the market trend is what's pushing the more dense development in the community.
Great, thank you. Well, no other business? Motion to adjourn.
Michael, we're sitting with a person who carries it.